Hey MoDiv listeners! MoDiv Talks practically had no idea where to start but with Anchor, a free website and app, and we were able to get right off our feet. You can record and edit right on your phone, get your podcast distributed to places like Spotify, and even earn money. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm right now to get everything you need to make your podcast.
With each stroke and each sketch, a little piece of life is reclaimed.
After the accident, I became an introvert. I just stood home. I avoided talking with people because I couldn't keep up with the conversations.
But traumatic brain injury survivor Jennifer Mount found her voice again after a therapist at JFK Johnson Rehabilitation Institute put a brush back in her hands.
It just made me more comfortable in my skin. I was more confident.
The former art instructor was able to reconnect with the cognitive functions and mobility she lost from her injury. Doctors say evidence shows recreational therapies like art or music help heal the brain at faster and more complete rate.
If children are really frustrated or angry, I'll often give them a piece of clay, and that really helps them work out their frustrations. They can hit the clay, they can model the clay, they can make things.
Well, National Jewish Health just finished the first study of its kind using art therapy on kids with asthma. The study found that it helped the kids better communicate, and that helped their parents, giving them a better understanding.
This podcast was brought to you by Modern Divergence's collaboration with United Under Art. If you or your organization are interested in being featured on MoDiv Talks, make sure to contact us. Welcome. If you're new, thank you for joining us, and if you aren't, thank you for tuning in again. My name is Maxine, and today I'm joined by the creator of today's episode.
Hello everyone, my name is Faith. If you haven't already guessed the topic for today, it's art therapy and diving into the intersection of art therapy and mental health. Art therapy is the use of art and other creative outlets to explore emotion, reduce anxiety, and resolve other psychological conflicts. From just the type of materials that you use, the colors, it's really cool how much your art therapist can decipher.
Yeah, art therapy is really cool. You have any experiences with art therapy in your own life?
Actually, not that much. Yeah, apart from just regular listening to music whenever I feel sad or stressed, I feel like that's as close as I've actually been to art therapy. How about you?
Oh yeah, I didn't really have a good idea of what art therapy was until I remember this one thing we do in my school. Well, one of my old schools. We would have this little assembly thing every Wednesday, and they would just have us gather in like the theater or auditorium or whatever, and they just have like all sorts of like paint brushes and like music available in every corner. And for 30 minutes for that assembly, we could do whatever we wanted. And I found that really cathartic because we could just get away from all the stresses of school and kind of just let loose, and we wouldn't be punished for it at all. So, yeah, it was really fun.
That sounds really cool, actually.
Other than that, though, I don't really know what they called it. I think they called it like mindfulness or something, but yeah.
Yeah, I've disliked like taking art classes since like middle school, so definitely art therapy was not the call for me when I thought about it.
I think the good thing about it too is like you don't really have to be good at art. Like I'm definitely not good at art at all. But just like getting something down, it just like clears your mind. And on that note, allow me to introduce Serena from United Under Art.
Hi, thanks for having me. So, United Under Art is a global community service organization led primarily by high school and middle school students. Our mission is to provide underprivileged communities and vulnerable populations, particularly the ill, the elderly, and children around the world with opportunities and experiences in the arts. We do this through fundraisers and various free events like concerts and workshops, and we currently have about 200 members from around 13 countries and 11 chapters that run local events in their areas.
United Under Art sounds amazing, and I know that the impact your organization is making is super important. I know that leading an organization can get super stressful, so if you're comfortable with sharing, can you tell us about a time you experienced some kind of mental health issue?
Sure. So when I first started high school, I felt very out of place. I I just moved from a Midwest suburb to New York City, which was a large adjustment in and of itself. And on top of that, I had auditioned for and been accepted to a top performing arts school in the city. So freshman year was really rough for me. I was very unfamiliar with and wary of all the new cultures and mannerisms of the city and my school. And I didn't feel like I fit in at the school, so to speak. In addition, my classes were scheduled wrong, and for the first couple of weeks, I had to fight to get them corrected. One of them was never corrected, and I ended up having to repeat that year, which was upsetting as well. And I was also very unsure on how to navigate the city's public transportation system. Had never really, ever really used public transportation before. And of course, many students had already found friend groups from middle school. So I felt really left out, didn't feel like I could fit in, was stressed about the new course load from high school, and also coming from a much smaller middle school with more personalized attention in classes and having a lot of close friends that were very similar to me in terms of culture and upbringing, I was very anxious at the time about my next few years in high school.
Thank you for sharing that with us. So as art, okay,
It's cool.
thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that with us. So has art helped you in any sort of way to dealing with your feelings or your anxiety?
Definitely, though maybe not quite in the way that most people would think. In terms of art, the most significant form to my personal story is music, and I like music well enough and I enjoy listening and playing to it on occasion, but I was never really immersed in it or obsessed with it in the way that some others are. Music, or really any art form, in that way doesn't exactly dominate my life in the sense of playing it obsessively or listening to it a lot. To me, what really stood out about music and what really helped me during my freshman year of high school was being able to see what it could stand for and what it could do for so many other people. Going to an art school, there were so many people so passionate about their craft, and what really pulled me out of my sad spiral of feeling sorry for myself was being able to see them practice, perform, and use those abilities to help others, whether it's just, volunteering at an elementary school or doing a workshop to teach some underprivileged kids about, the arts. For so long at school, I'd been kind of trying to force myself into their shoes, to try to like and play the same music as them, thinking I would then fit in and my social problems would be solved. But as I watched them, I realized for me, it really wasn't about loving to listen to or play music. What was inspiring the most to me was being able to see what we do at our school through our classes, practices, and performances, which is really just connecting to people of all backgrounds and interests. And that's also the reason why I wanted to create United Under Art. Because for me, it wasn't about, just listening to or playing the music, but it was about, what it can be used for and what it can stand for so many people.
Wow, that's honestly so powerful. I'm glad you've been able to express yourself uniquely through your art. What do you think the relationship between art and mental health is? What could make art so unique from other mediums in this regard?
I think art is unique as a form of very, very personal expression because it can be very private to you if you choose to keep it to yourself, but it can also be public if you allow others to see it and see who you are. You can really pour your heart and soul into art, for example, through music where your song choice, musicality, and your own personal playing style all communicate some things about who you are, or through visual art where your colors and subject matter and style really reflect on you. And in terms of mental health, I think art is a way to really communicate and to let out one's feelings in a safe haven. And it really allows art to speak for who you are.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Art is such an amazing use of exploring your emotions. So what are your favorite forms of art therapy? How has it personally helped you? And have you tried to integrate this in your own projects within United Under Art?
Get involved with organizations, student-led or otherwise. like this podcast. You can donate to them, maybe through an art auction, similar to the one my organization did to raise money for struggling artists. You could design art, maybe posters to raise awareness for mental health and combat stigma. Also, you could use your art to advocate for mental health and support people struggling with mental health in your own community or on a wider level. Maybe send cards to people or put them online. You could upload a video of music or dance or drama inspired to empower people and spread awareness for mental health. You never know who might be able to see your efforts and be inspired to help, or whose day might be brightened, even if it's just a little bit. And even if the activity you did was as simple as just posting a drawing, telling people that they're not alone.
And I find it really important that you brought that up. On that same note, how do you feel artists could use their art to raise more awareness about mental health?
First and foremost, I want to say that if you can, you should try to talk about any feelings of sadness, insecurity, depression, anxiety, stress, etc. with someone who won't judge, hopefully a family member or a professional. But I know that can be very difficult, even if your family and friends seem supportive. So for art, I'd say to try to let your feelings out through your art, because art should always be a safe space and a haven for you. And you should be able to have something that's personal and private, but can also be shared in the future if you're ready or when you're ready. Secondly, I would also recommend sharing some form of art, not necessarily something that's very personal to you, but something, maybe lighthearted, or some sort of painting you did years ago, especially with someone else, and especially through volunteering or helping someone that may be feeling down. I believe for the first one, for making art for yourself, that's really good to get whatever you need or want to get it off your chest. And I think the second one is valuable because someone else can appreciate your art and appreciate who you are and what you're bringing to them. And, someone that you can share happiness with through art.
That's so true. There are definitely a lot of organizations that are looking for artists, that are looking for people to talk about mental health, like MoDiv. What advice would you give to young, aspiring artists that are also struggling with mental health?
I think every form of art can be very helpful, whether that's music or visual art, creative writing, dance, drama, technical theater. But I think the art form is very specific to each person and what they will get out of it. It depends on each person. For me, what helped was helping other people through my music, first through volunteering and then later on through forming United Under Art. And through that, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and honestly, happiness. It was something I found after trying a lot of different activities and books in multiple genres and in multiple ways. And I found that I really enjoyed doing it, and it was very cathartic. And seeing, how my music could make an impact, that was what, to me, brought the most happiness and the most inspiration. So I think every person should really explore things that they're interested in with a lot of depth, and also look for some new things that they find interesting, because everyone's path will be different. So if something that helped me may not be the right fit for everyone, but I think everyone can find something out of whatever art form that they really, really love.
That's so true. Art in all its different forms, music, drawing, painting, it's all works for different people, but it all has a positive effect. So as you may know, MoDiv is focused on empowering neurodivergent individuals. How do you feel art provides a platform for neurodivergence?
I think art is a very dynamic medium, and it really can't be defined by any one thing. It's constantly evolving and being reshaped, and each person's artistic style is very unique. Art allows you to unapologetically express who you are the way you want, without having so-called flaws pointed out. And art as a whole is a very accepting medium, because there really is no normal in art, just what makes you happy. And I hope in the future our society as a whole will be like that too for every person.
I really sympathize with that one thing you said about art being a really dynamic movement and how it couldn't be defined by one thing. Do you feel you might have any last comments or thoughts you might want to share?
I just wanted to thank you guys again for having me and for running this podcast, especially since mental health is still so stigmatized and really not talked about enough. And for everyone out there listening, whether or not you enjoy art, make sure to always take some time for yourself every day to appreciate yourself and do something you love.
Awesome. Once again, huge thanks and huge shout out to Serena. Thank you so much for doing this interview with us. We really appreciate the work that you're doing, and we look forward to the work that you will be doing in the future. And to our listeners, we urge you to support United Under Art. They've got a lot in store, a lot of potential. They're killing the game right now, and we really want to see more support for their current projects. All right, so we asked our listeners to submit a question, comment, or story to be featured in this episode. At Den of Mistakes asked, can you do art therapy even if you don't like art? Well, absolutely.
I definitely think so, yeah. I feel like the misconception is that art is just like the only form of art you can use to explore your emotions is just like drawing or painting. But like that's not true. Like I said, I hated art. In middle school, high school, still like technically hate like the classes I took in middle school. But music is also a form of art and I absolutely love that. So you can obviously still do art therapy even if you don't like the basic concepts like drawing or painting or something like that.
Like, I feel like a lot of people don't realize it, but we practice some kind of art therapy every single day. So it's really just like a label. And from at Anisha Siva commented, art therapy is the best. Yes, it is.
I kind of gotta agree with that. Like, because when you think of therapy in like the normal way, you think of like this gloomy, just sitting in a little room, talking about your feelings, just
Lying
on
on the
couch or
couch,
something.
yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that. Like, you can do some painting, 3D sculpting, or whatever you choose to let out your emotions. Like, you can literally just have fun while you're in therapy and just talk about it with your therapist. It's really cool.
Yeah, like, in a way, I feel like it's a really good thing that a lot of forms of art therapy aren't labeled as art therapy, because as soon as you see the word therapy, you get super scared. You're just like, is there something wrong with me? What's happening?
Yeah, there's even like just that stigma even behind therapy itself. So just like every form of therapy, like have you seen art therapy be stigmatized personally?
I definitely think, like, I mean, therapy itself, you don't really see that being taken very seriously. Like, it's gotten better as of late. Like, I hear a lot of my friends getting therapists. I hear that it's becoming a lot more of a discussion-worthy topic. But as for art therapy itself, it kind of just seems like something that people, like, oh, it's just a bunch of people sitting around with crayons and messing up. It's like, it's not therapy. It's just you forgetting about things that happening.
I feel like compared to other forms of therapy, something like art therapy is also kind of demeaned, like it's seen as not as serious, which doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like the effect is still there, but like the process is just, I feel like art therapy has a more exciting process compared to our typical traditional form of therapy.
Yeah, and going back to that one point I think somebody brought up about art therapy being so effective because you kind of forget that it's art therapy can be especially powerful, especially when people aren't entirely comfortable with being really out and about the issues that they're experiencing. It could just be really cathartic to kind of just sit down, write everything out, or just make a whole mess. I think that's what art therapy really is.
Yeah, like they're trying to look at like what you're thinking of when you're making this art, what memories that like just comes to mind. If any of your strange feelings kind of surface through your art, or if you have a change of mood while you're making this art, I just think it's so cool.
Yeah.
Like what sort of stuff you can find out from like choosing to use colored pencils or watercolor instead.
Yeah.
It's just really crazy how much they can interpret from just your art.
And there's no pressure to be like aesthetically pleasing at all. Like some of the greatest artists out there, can't bring up any names because I'm not an artist, but like they just drew cubes and those sold for millions.
Oh my gosh, art is definitely really diverse, and that's kind of like both an advantage and a disadvantage, because there's also some people like, dude, it's just blogs. Like, what are y'all doing?
Like modern
But at the same
divergence,
time,
eh?
what? I've also seen art therapy be used for like really cool stuff, like helping women or people who have been sexually abused.
And in prisons, I believe that's something that they do with female inmates, because a lot of them, you know how there's like this thing going around about how women only wear makeup for men? And there was like this study going around that was kind of disproving that misconception that women would only wear it for men, because they would see that female inmates would actually do favors for guards to get makeup. So they're doing favors to get makeup, not the other way around. So it's like, just bringing art into their lives, you can see how important it's been for women, how important it's been for their self-expression.
Yeah, because in a way, like, makeup itself is just another form of art.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched Skin Wars?
I have not. But I've heard of it.
It's really cool. It's like this. Yeah, it's so great. I love it. It's basically just like painting on somebody's body, and it's a whole show. But even that was really cool to watch.
Oh.
All right.
I think the closest thing I've watched
If
is
any of
like
you-
RuPaul's Drag Race, but that's it. That's our therapy.
You guys should definitely check it out. All right, so do you know of any like benefits of art therapy or ways that people can benefit from it?
I think besides the mental relief, it could be a really good way to explore a new hobby, like venturing into music production and finding out that I really liked it, even though I wasn't necessarily the best at it, definitely helps me get through a lot of my days, because everything's just super stressful with the quarantine and all. You just need some time to relax.
True. I know a lot of people have been picking up like painting or sculpting during quarantine. It's something good to pass up time.
Yeah, and I'm seeing like classmates that have been neglecting the instruments, like at the bottom of their basement, suddenly learning how to play it, and they play it during classes, like the Me theme song. That's what my classmates
Literally me. Like, I have a keyboard that's been sitting in my closet for like the past 6 years. But because of quarantine, I brought it back out so I could have something to do.
And that's another thing too, because like I used to want to play the piano, and I also have a piano in my basement just staying there doing nothing. And I think it's because there's a pressure to learn art. And I think taking away that pressure, like not having a teacher hounding at you for every mistake, it's makes you appreciate what art was really meant to be.
Definitely. Really. And like, you don't have to be an artist to do art therapy, like, and you don't have to be a child either. Like, it's okay. Like, obviously, like, art is like more appealing to children because, you know, it's fun. Like, children love coloring, they love doing all of that. But like, art therapy is for anybody who's nervous, who wants to do something fun and active during therapy.
Yeah.
And it's something that's really cool for getting out your emotions, even at home. I've seen some questions like, can you keep your own artwork, or like, do like the therapists keep what they get from your art to themselves? And yes, they do, because they might be an art therapist, but they're still a therapist, and it's like their professional duty not to share your artwork or not to talk about what they've seen in your artwork as well. I know they let you keep your artwork if you want to. And I'm sure, like, I don't know, I've never been to an art therapist, but they probably like ask you, like, you know, what does this color make you feel or whatever.
Oh, so like color therapy. I think I've heard of that before. I'm not too informed on the topic, but I do know that some people, it's kind of like with the sounds, they just have a bunch of colors flash on the screen while the person's like lying down. They just let it. I think it's more of an alternative medicine type of thing. Like they use color light to treat your mental health illnesses. Some kind of, oh, you're channeling your red energy right now or something like that.
I've never heard of that, but that sounds really cool.
I think they get
So
very
what?
particular about the instruments they use too.
Yeah, I think so. Like I've heard of people using color pencils because that represents more of like a control of what you can do
Mm.
in comparison to using watercolor
Oh.
paint, which is more wet, which is like more flowy. So it kind of like that's why it's like really cool because everything like from the materials that you're using to the colors that you choose.
And I
Yeah.
think I read somewhere that they do try to avoid materials that could easily be broken because a lot of these people definitely
Hmm.
like they might be in a really low point in their lives. They might not be able to control their
Yeah.
emotions.
Okay. What are the biggest misconceptions about mental health and just therapy in general? Is that you're perceived as weak for letting out your
Mhm.
emotions for talking to somebody, but that's really not the case at all.
Yeah, and I feel like things like art therapy are really just meant for you to be your most vulnerable self, and that's probably one of the main reasons it gets looked down upon. It's because people aren't really all that ready to share that bit of yourself.
Yeah, but that's just honestly such a horrible thing. And I can see that reflected in so many aspects of society because people are afraid to show who they really are or be vulnerable with their emotion. And that's just overall hurts the entire world because there's no need for that. Because we need people to be vulnerable, but for the people they're also being vulnerable
Yeah.
to accept it and not like dismiss
Mm.
them. But therapy is does not make you weak. In fact, like it's meant to make you stronger and healthier. It lets you know what your strengths are and how to resolve and communicate with what you're feeling and your problems. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like there's it's even if you look at it in like a logical way, it's more courageous to face your fears, to talk about your problems, and to just pretend that they don't exist.
Yeah, and there's just strength in being able to put yourself out there. Like, I think the biggest problem that people face when they're trying to get help for themselves is, or when people are urging them to get help, is that they just don't really feel comfortable sharing with that. And that's completely valid because we don't foster a very healthy environment for that.
Also, I've also seen that they wonder why should I go to a therapist instead of talking to my best friend or my family. Can you think of any reasons for that?
I definitely, yeah, that's something that's been under contention in a lot of psychiatric circles. It's like, oh, this person might have accreditation, but this person knows them better. Shouldn't they be the most well equipped to deal with their problem? And I think there could be truth to that. Like, they might be more comfortable talking to their friend about their issues, but at the same time, this is why people have been training for this. They're most of their
Yeah.
professional careers. Like,
Especially if you're looking for that confidentiality. Like, I guess if it's your best friend, that you absolutely trust them. But I know for some of my friends, I will not tell them a single
yeah,
word because I know. I feel
it
like
isn't
if
even
you're,
intended. Like, it's just a slip of mouth. Like,
yeah,
you don't really know what the other person's comfortable with sharing unless they're very explicit about it.
exactly. Like you were saying before, like the mental health professional has training, they have experience, like they know what they're doing.
Mm.
So obviously, you totally should talk to your friends and your family if that helps you, but definitely like don't expect it to have the same effect as a therapist who's went to school. People have also been wondering like why should I just take some medication like some antidepressants instead of going to art therapy?
I think that they don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive, and it really depends on the person because on one hand, somebody might not be able to access these antidepressants depending on the environment they're raised in
True.
or just like financial insecurity. And art therapy might just be the most viable option for them.
That's honestly such a great point
Yeah.
to bring up. Like I know therapy can be seen as expensive, but in a way, like art therapy, you can find art materials everywhere. It doesn't have to be $100 consultation with your art therapist. Art therapy can be something that you can do at home, and that's really cool that you brought that up.
It's pretty cool too that a lot of art therapy doesn't exist in a therapy room. Like, you see community centers, you see nursing homes
Yeah,
hosting a lot of art therapy events, just laying out art materials. And I think that's what we should be doing more of.
That's really, yeah, I definitely agree. So for anyone who's considering art therapy, definitely give it a try, but make sure to put your dedication and time into it, because if you put in a lot to art therapy, you'll also get a lot out of it and you'll feel so much better.
Alrighty, so thanks for tuning in. This was a really lovely talk that we had with both United Under Art, Serena, and just general discussion. So, yeah. Thank you for listening. Make sure to tune into the next episode, and we'll be seeing you.